Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. The Biden administration has not had a great first year in office. With the migrant crisis, the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, economic concerns, and plenty more, the president's approval ratings have plummeted over the past 5 months. But what can we expect from this presidency going forward? I have with me Liberty Nation's senior political correspondent, Tim Donner, and his crystal ball to make some predictions. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Great. Now, before we go to the future, can you give us a quick assessment of Biden's first year in office up until this point?
Well, Jeff, I think the biggest problem that they've had is that they've completely misread the mandate, if you want to call it that they received in 2020. They acted like they had just won the 1932 election or the 1964 election, which enabled the New Deal and the Great Society. Those were landslide elections with a massive mandate from the people to do dramatic things. This was a very narrow victory for the Democrats. In fact, they lost ground in Congress. They were able to win barely in the Electoral College, and yet they acted with their agenda like they had won a landslide, and the American people weren't buying it. They've made all manner of unforced errors at the border in Afghanistan about COVID. I mean, a huge mistake, Jeff, was to basically fly the flag of mission accomplished on July 4th regarding COVID. It reminded me of George Bush in Iraq, declaring premature victory. Now, I think the decline in Joe Biden's mental state was obvious to anyone paying attention in 2020 during the election. But I don't think that the incompetence that we've seen from this administration was so obvious. The problem isn't even so much ideology at this point as competence. And finally, Jeff, I'd say that Kamala Harris, if it's possible, is even more unappealing than we thought. And so it leaves this administration in a terrible quandary with staggeringly low poll numbers heading into a new year.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make, though, that at this point, it is less about ideology and more about competence, because this administration, and I think Kamala Harris really exemplifies that, even if it's possible, more than Biden does. So it'll be interesting to see how this works out going forward. So what do you see? What do you see on the horizon for the Biden administration in 2022?
Well, I think they believe they're going to take another bite at the apple of voting rights. They tried to get that out of the gate. I mean, look, you can understand it. It's like they had a fix of crack in 2020 with the ideal voting circumstances they could possibly get. Every law changed they wanted changed. The deck was just stacked in their favor to the point where almost anybody with a D next to his name could have won. So they're addicted to that kind of electoral advantage. Now they want to make it permanent. And Republicans are pointing out this is not how it was before 2020, and we'll be damned if this is how it's going to be going forward. But they're going to take another right at the voting rights apple. In other words, trying to federalize elections and make themselves unbeatable permanently. That's the goal of voting rights. So they'll take another shot at that. They'll take some other shot at Build Back Better in a scaled down form so they can declare some kind of victory after the disaster of Joe Manchin, a single guy being unable to be convinced over months of hardcore campaigning to get him to change his mind, didn't budge an inch. If anything, he went in harder. So they're also going to have to unleash tons of spin about how November, even if it's the disaster it's supposed to be, doesn't really have anything to do with the Democrats. It's just historical patterns. Joe Biden doesn't have much to do with him. I mean, Joe Biden tried to claim the 2021 elections, which were a thorough repudiation of Democrats, had nothing to do with him. Well, they can really claim that as long as they want, but when we get to November 9th, the morning after the 2022 elections, they're going to have a lot of splaining to do.
Yeah, I think so. And so what do you think for, I mean, that's for the Biden administration. I agree. They're going to try to go for voting rights and build back better. But what about the Democratic Party writ large, like Democrats in Congress or at other levels? Do you think it's going to be basically the same, or do you think that their approach will be different, or how do you see that playing out?
Well, they need an infusion of new blood, Jeff. The Obama years have basically stripped the party of its foundations. They lost over 1,000 seats during the Obama years. Well, Obama saved himself, but not his party. And so there's a dearth of leadership in this party, except on the progressive wing, where AOC and Rashida Tlaib are demonstrating a lot of leadership among progressives, but that's a very small subsection of the American people. I think in 2022, Jeff, I would predict it's the end of Nancy Pelosi, because I think she's not going to want to relegate herself to the minority again. So I see Nancy Pelosi as bowing out after the 2022 elections, hand control back to the Republicans. I see Joe Manchin possibly leaving the Democratic Party because Mitch McConnell has said he'd be open to leaving him as chairman of committees when the Republicans take over, even if he's still a Democrat, but he wants him to become a Republican. So they're trying to seduce him now. And I think the Democrats are going to try to act like they're tough on crime. They're going to try to act like they want to refund the police. But you know what? That train left the station long ago.
Yeah, I think the die is cast in that regard. I have been seeing rumblings of Pelosi possibly stepping down, and Manchin might go independent, or he might do what Mitch McConnell wants and go Republican, but it'll be interesting to see. But last question, though, I mean, we can't talk about Biden, we can't talk about the Democrats without talking about their ministry of propaganda. So what do you see in 2022 for the activist media? What role will they be taking?
Well, I did a piece on this for LibertyNation.com entitled, "Is Elite Media Protecting Biden or trying to push him out the door?" Because they need to protect him against the threat of a resurgent Donald Trump in 2024, which they are paranoid to the core about. So what they're doing is they're trying to write stories that are basically gaslighting the situation, saying, "Are you going to believe me or your lying eyes?" For example, David Axelrod, the architect of Obama's success, his campaigns, and he was a senior strategist for him. He's written an article saying Biden is not done. Okay, there's another article entitled "No, Biden did not surrender to Omicron," in which they're explaining, and this was in New York Magazine. So they have to go beyond now just protecting him to explaining him, but they're starting to lose confidence that they can do that. So they're going to have to try and protect him. But they're also, you're seeing, like even on CNN, Chris Cillizza is another thing I pointed out in the article. He's already written an article with the 11 candidates who could take Joe Biden's place in 2024. So I think the die is cast. And the only reason Joe Biden is officially going to run again is because he has to say that. Otherwise, there's bedlam in the party. And I think there will be bedlam in the Democratic Party in 2022 because they're going to lose control of the House. They may lose control of the Senate. And they've effectively have a president who's lost control of the White House.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I are on the same page about Biden. I don't believe for a second he's going to run again. My theory is always going to be that he's going to step down even before it gets there. But either way, he's not running again. But we will be keeping an eye on this here at Liberty Nation. Thank you for joining me, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Jeff.
And remember, this show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for
Guess what?
Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I
others.
can do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.